there, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, hurtle into horror, and plunge into peril. If you've ever seen somebody strip in a graveyard, you're in the right place. I'm Justin, and I would have opened the army container with that key that you get on the tin of corned beef.
I'm Nico, and Return of the Living Dead is just every day in public education.
Well, I'm Dan, and I definitely would not strip in a graveyard in the middle of the night. Maybe during the day, though.
Well, Nico kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, but we're here today to review The Return of the Living Dead. This one was directed by Dan O'Bannon, starring Tom Matthews as Freddy, Clu Gulager as Bert, Beverly Randolph as Tina, Miguel A. Nunez Jr. as Spider, and Don Calfa as Ernie. So we open in the glorious year of 1984 with a young man named Freddy working in a medical supply warehouse that basically deals in like cadavers and whatnot. Freddy asks his boss to tell him the creepiest thing that he's ever seen come through the warehouse, and his boss tells him about an army experiment that went awry back in the 1960s that basically resulted in toxic gas reanimating corpses. After they got the situation under control, the army shipped all the corpses to like a singular location, but due to a delivery mistake, some of the corpses got delivered to the warehouse. Maybe that's where my Amazon packages went too. Freddy's boss shows Freddy the corpse, like one of the corpses that came to the warehouse, because there's like a window in the container, which is I guess pretty cool, or not. But he takes things too far when he bangs on the container to show how solid it is. Turns out, American engineering ain't that tough, and the container wasn't built well. It begins to leak toxic gas that knocks out Freddy and his boss. So, while that's going down, Nico, what's kind of happening simultaneously?
So, simultaneously, we swap over to Tina, who's Freddy's girlfriend, and her group of punk friends, which includes a young man named Spider. That's not his birth name. That's just what he fucking calls himself. Like, could you fucking imagine?
Hey, how do you know?
You don't know that.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I don't, but like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
The group want a party, but they don't know of any parties going down, so they decide that they'll just pick up Freddy when he gets off of work, because Freddy always knows where all the best parties are at. Unfortunately, though, the group decides to pass the time in a graveyard, which is exceptionally poor planning due to the imminent actions of Freddy and his boss.
So right on cue, I come back in like the second verse. Better than the first?
Oh.
All right, so Freddy and his boss wake up, and they immediately feel ill. This is probably due to all that gas they just inhaled. And to make matters worse, the gas has escaped into the warehouse vents, reanimating several animals as well as a corpse. They contact the owner of the warehouse, Bert, and he comes over. Now, Bert, being, a red-blooded American, he doesn't want any bad publicity for his business. So instead of doing the right thing, he suggests they kill the zombie by destroying the brain, like they've seen in the movies. But it doesn't work. In fact, even chopping up the body doesn't work, as the individual parts still move around. Bert then decides that they need to pay a visit to his friend across the street, who happens to own a mortuary, and more importantly, a crematorium. And when we need that burning hot fire, we got to turn to Dan. Dan, what happens next?
Well, at first, the crematorium seemed like some big brain shit, but in reality, it basically doomed the whole town. When they burn the corpse, the gas evaporates into the atmosphere, which then comes down as rain, reanimating all the corpses in the graveyard where Tina and company are hanging out.
Didn't this happen in Uzumaki?
Maybe?
I
remember there was a cremation, and
then
there was like
shit
an
got
evil cloud.
progressively
the
fucked.
cloud. Yeah. Well, to complicate matters further, Freddy and his boss are beginning to become gravely ill from breathing in the gas earlier.
Yeah, gravely.
Aha. Tina and the group of punks are attacked by the zombies, and they scatter, with Tina fleeing into the warehouse where Freddy works, but she is confronted by a zombie. After a brief struggle, she is rescued by her friends.
Well, you know who fights for his friends? It's not just Ike, it's also Nico. Nico, what happens next?
If I didn't fight for my friends, I would be in a different profession, let me tell you. While this is going on, some paramedics show up, but they say that Freddy and his boss no longer have any pulse and their room temperature. So they head outside to discuss matters, but they are promptly killed by zombies. Tina and her remaining friends show up at the mortuary, and the entire group board themselves in. Freddy and his boss then turn into zombies, and the group lock them inside the mortuary chapel. They realize help isn't coming because people just keep getting eaten by the living dead. So they hatch a plan to grab a car and escape. Spider and Bert manage to get away, but Tina and the mortuary owner are left behind. So they hide away in the mortuary attic. Spider and Bert then head over to the medical warehouse, where they run into a couple members of the punk group and defeat the zombie that was in the basement. They then try to call the police for help, but we see that the zombies have already begun to take over the town, and the police are just incapable of really offering any assistance. Bert then realizes there's no covering this up, and he calls a number on the side of the containers that house the misshaped corpses to get some help.
Well, if anyone can solve the situation, it must be Dan. Dan, how do they get saved? How does the situation end?
Well, this alerts a colonel who has been tasked with locating the missing shipment. He confirms the situation and realizes that things have gone way too far. So he orders a nuclear strike on the area, as you would, killing about 4,000 people and sanitizing the area, or so he thinks. The movie ends with the colonel telling his superior that the missile strike was a success and everything should be okay, but in reality we see more of the infected rain falling and more corpses awakening. The end.
Well, we have quite a bit to get to here, so let's get started. First off, how's this movie sound to you, Nico?
It sounds really good. The sound effects are very satisfying, particularly with the gore sound effects of things like squishing and breaking and bones snapping and faces getting munched down on. And combining that with an honestly really, really funny script, and it's a good time. It's a good time.
I agree. I also kind of like they have, obviously because they have a punk group, they also have punk music in this as well, which I like because I feel like it was a very youthful and exuberant take on the zombie genre.
For sure.
So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. But now we turn to the podcast resident maestro, Dan. What did you think of the sound in this one?
I was just going to kind of echo what you said about the soundtrack. I thought it was a really fun soundtrack. The songs all had like themes to them. I mean, there was like a song about like the living dead and, energetic song about that. There was like, I think when all the zombies came to life in the graveyard at the beginning, or not the beginning of the film, but the first time they come to life and Tina's friends and everyone are there. I think the song is like about like a party and, you're watching these zombies like running, attacking people, and you're just listening to like a sort of upbeat punk party music. Like it fit really well, and I think it worked.
All right. Well, you know how you said you wanted to echo me, right? So an echo is one half of a reminisce, the other half being what you saw in the past. So I need you to tell me what you saw in the past, and I need you to tell me what you thought about how this movie looked.
Well, in the past, I thought that from what I saw, this movie looked pretty good. I actually really liked the past zombies. I thought they looked a lot of fun. They were like kind of goofy, but also like they were just fucking fun, to be honest. And there was that one like main lead zombie that like started the whole thing, I guess. He was like dripping with ooze, and I feel like that zombie looked different than all the others.
Yeah.
But it was just, I don't know. I have no better way to explain it than just fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nico, you might potentially be the zombie of this group. So why don't you go ahead and let us know, how does this one look to you?
Yeah, I'm definitely the zombie of the group. We all know that. But I really liked the look of that one zombie in particular. It looked like it just had so much flesh just sloughing off, and almost like there was pulp and blood all around him. And like, I wish the rest of the zombies looked like that one dude. That would have been incredible, but I feel like they probably blew a good portion of their budget in designing that one guy. I don't know. But in terms of the rest of it, the costume design is all really fun, particularly given this is an 80s affair. We've got the, like leather jackets, and there are people with like fucking metal and stuff all over their bodies, and it looks like I told you to imagine a generic, wacky 80s zombie movie, this is what comes to mind, but like in a good way.
I agree. In particular, I adore the special effects.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if they were to ever do something like this nowadays, I feel like there would be the temptation to use like a ton of CG on some of the zombies. But I adore the practical effects in this movie. And I think they fit, because this movie is, to use a word I learned from Netflix, irreverent. I feel like, it fits. It fits. Even when it looks a little goofy sometimes, it fits, I think. Let's go ahead now, and I will give you guys a little history lesson, shall we say. So, long story short, originally, this movie was supposed to be kind of like a joint venture. So, basically, there was this dude called John Russo, right? And he worked with George Romero on Night of the Living Dead. Apparently, he used to like write the books and whatnot. So when they went their separate ways, Russo was going to make a movie with friend of the podcast in our minds, Tobe Hooper, was going to originally direct this. But then I guess he was doing something else.
He did Chainsaw Massacre,
knows?
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so because of that, Dan O'Bannon was already part of the film, I think, on the script department. And then all of a sudden he took the director's chair as well. Now, while the movie is not an official sequel, in air quotes, to Night of the Living Dead, it is considered by many people to be kind of in the same kind of family and very important to the series as a whole. How do you think this movie kind of, knowing that it's part of this kind of like zombie prestige in America, how do you feel about this movie and its role? You know what I mean? Like, do you think it fits when you hear Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead, and then this movie's right there? Like, how do you feel about that?
I love it. I think it's a great different take, and it shows that zombie movies don't always have to be like serious and spooky and scary. Like it's just a fun time, and I think that shows a different side of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I definitely agree.
100%.
I definitely agree. Although I will say, in this particular slew of zombie films, it is occasionally difficult to keep track of which one we're talking about. We got Return of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Mid-Afternoon Stroll of the Dead. Like, you would think they would branch out a little bit more, but I do like that this is, as you say, Justin, and as Netflix says, irreverent and fun. This is one of the most notable examples of horror comedy that I can think of that we've watched for the pod, and I think it's really a shining example.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel like this is one of the few examples of horror comedy that is more horror than it is comedy. Like,
you think so?
There's actual consequences to the actions. People die like a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not even like funny sometimes when they die. They just die. And I think it's kind of interesting because you're right. There's definitely a comedic element to this movie throughout. I mean, the whole movie, to be honest, is kind of tongue in cheek, which to, kind of echo reminisce what Dan said, I think that that's a good thing. I personally don't. So this is kind of a throwback, but towards the start of the podcast, we reviewed Train to Busan, and we were like, "Yo,
that classic
this movie
horror
is like
comedy,
top
Hilarious.
zombie shit." And I feel like, and maybe this is kind of a weird thing to say, but is this movie almost kind of like a breath of fresh air to you when it comes to zombie stuff, or do you think that there's a lot of movies out here currently like this movie?
I mean, I'd say it's a breath of fresh air, I guess.
And I guess, what about this movie maybe do you like that maybe you don't see in some zombie shit nowadays that maybe they could or should try?
I feel like this movie, yeah, but it doesn't take itself seriously. Like, there's an extended scene when I forget the character's name, but there's this one punk girl who her whole thing is like she just gets naked everywhere and starts like
Yeah,
dancing and
trash.
gyrating. Yeah, trash. And there's a scene where the member of the crew who drives the car is like left with them, and Trash is dancing up on them, and she's just like, "What's the matter? Why you so upset? Don't you want to blow off some steam?" And the guy is like, "Come on, Trash, be serious. You got to take this seriously. We're in a real crisis right now." And it's just like the absolute disconnect there is just money.
Dude, when he's talking about his chains, because he has like, you know, like chains like going from like his ear to like his nose. And,
It's like he's got fucking
all this
paper
shit.
clips across his face or some shit.
And he's like, "This isn't just shit. This is a lifestyle."
It's not a
Like,
phase,
you know.
Mom.
So
I just feel
thought-
like all the actors had fun.
yes.
Yeah.
And you can tell. And I mean, there's a scene when Freddy and his mentor guy, when they're like starting to become zombies, kind of, they're just like in pain all the time. And some of the other characters transport them they like carry them from one room to another. And Freddy and the other guy are just screaming the whole time. And I was like, that scene must have been so much fun because they're just like yelling and screaming in pain and like, and not even like the serious. It's just like, ah, and they're just going crazy. And I feel like half of Freddy's script was just him screaming. And
Honestly.
like I can only imagine the audition. Like, oh well, how good are you at screaming? You know, like I don't know. I feel like it would be fun to do that.
Jesse Leach comes through.
So I actually had a question. The zombies in this movie, one thing that they do that maybe other zombies don't do in some other movies, they talk. Like they do actually say like brains. And one of the zombies has like a full-on conversation with the heroes, and the zombie basically says, "Hey, you know, death hurts a lot. So brains makes us feel better. That's why we feel the need to eat brains." How do you feel about the zombies in this movie maybe being a little intelligent?
See, I'm torn because I feel like the classic, just like cannon fodder archetype of zombies is so iconic, just waves of flesh and bone coming at you, and there's nothing you can do. But at the same time, we have this one guy who gets on the fucking radio with the police, and he's like, "Actually, yeah, send more paramedics. That's a good idea. We need their brains." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, that's fine." And it's like, I don't know. There's a clear disconnect between. They're poking fun at it, and I like it. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
I mean, I thought it was cool. And I think not only if we take things to the extreme of like those scenes where dude is like the zombies calling for more paramedics, or the one zombie is like explaining why they feel pain or how eating brains makes them better or whatever. But I mean, there's times where zombies, just like Joe Schmo zombies, like do intelligent things, or instead of just like shambling around to mindlessly hit somebody, they like that one main zombie, like to get somebody out of a closet, he actually ties a chain around the doors and then like uses a pulley to pull the doors off. And like yeah, and like there's other zombies throughout the movie that do maybe not quite that much, but they're a little bit smarter, which I thought was kind of cool. And you know, again, this movie is just fun. I thought it offered a nice variety, but like I just didn't think into it too much. Like I just let it happen and enjoyed it.
Now, out of curiosity, I mean, we've discussed a number of times now that this movie kind of pokes fun at the general kind of zombie mythos. Would you view this as a deconstruction of the genre? Or do you think that might be a step too far?
I feel like it's a step too far just because there's so much of the genre that's still there. Like we've got people freaking out, people trying to hide and save lives. It's I can't say post-apocalyptic, but like currently apocalyptic kind of end of the world-esque event, and shit just gets increasingly more fucked. One thing that I will say that I appreciated that they included was, and one thing that I appreciate that we included in the synopsis here, Justin, is I feel like you could sum all of this down to the army fucked up. They should have just made better containers and we would have been fine. Like, I don't know what kind of Ziploc bag container shit they were doing there, but like, just get some fiberglass or something, man. Just like anything else so that when they're like, conk, conk, it's not like, oh no, we're all gonna die.
My favorite part was like the line immediately preceding that. He's like, hey, are these containers safe? This is army engineering. And then smacks it, and then it just like opens up immediately and breaks. I thought that was kind of funny. But I now want to go ahead and ask you guys here. This movie, you know, there's a lot of zombie culture and lore that we kind of take for granted nowadays. You know, like, of course, we have the classic zombies can, you know, they walk, they shamble. But there's been a fair amount of movies also where zombies run, right? And we know
For
zombies
Office.
like Brains. Haha, sometimes. And we know zombies like Brains. And other things like that, right? This movie brought about a lot of that stuff. Do you think this movie gets its, you know, its flowers for that kind of stuff?
Probably not.
Yeah, I feel like probably not as well, just because, and this is a hard thing to say because we've only been doing this podcast for like 3 years, which is kind of wild to say out loud. But anyway, like I don't feel like enough people still talk about this movie. This movie is really fucking funny, and it had a big cultural impact. And I don't know. I feel like it's not getting its due.
I want to talk about the what would you do, but before the what would you do, it's time to ask Dan. He's going to take on the lore and become our trivia master once again. Dan, I know that this movie has so much going on.
Our
there has to be some
lore
cool
lord.
trivia behind this.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a lot of classics. There's a ton of different trivia around this, and it was actually kind of hard to narrow down like a few, but just a couple. So some of the brains that the zombies eat are calf brains,
Oh,
like for real, like real calf brains.
hey.
And some of the zombie extras were actually paid bonuses to actually eat calf brains.
There you go.
But Dan O'Bannon, the director, didn't want the actors to do anything that he wasn't willing to do himself. So he also ate raw calf brains
There you go.
in front of him to
There
show
you
them
go.
that
Man's
he
a
was willing to do
fucking
it.
legend.
Yeah.
That's how you do
Damn.
it. You lead from the front.
Yep. When I read this one, I thought it was kind of funny because there's a point near the beginning when after Freddie and his mentor kind of like get gassed or whatever, the whole place smells really bad, and they take a can of Lysol off of the shelf and like spray Lysol around. And the filmmakers actually had to get approval from Lysol for that. And
Why?
Lysol was like, well, it's product placement. I mean, you clearly
Yeah.
see like Lysol.
Lysol.
Like, it's
I mean,
very
okay,
pronounced.
yeah, that's fair.
And Lysol agreed because they liked the idea that Lysol would kill any conceivable odor. Like, yeah, we could do that. And then lastly, there's a shot where in some office, there's an eye testing poster thing.
Yes.
And if you pause it, it actually reads, Bert is a slave driver and a cheap son of a bitch who is going bald too. Ha ha.
Oh no! Damn.
Yeah, and again, I had to leave out a ton of them, other ones, but yeah.
I will add my penny into this, you know, into this dollar Dan's given us. That you notice the mortuary owner, his name is Ernie,
Mm-hmm.
and Bert owns the medical facility.
Mm-hmm. I didn't notice that, but I did also read that Ernie is apparently supposed to be a Nazi. A
Whoa!
fake Nazi.
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Yep. So let me pull that one back up real quick.
Please.
Yeah, I feel like that was I feel like that's a cautious, curious item there. I did not catch that one at all. How'd you catch it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I read it.
Well, yeah, okay. fair enough.
But apparently it was also like confirmed that he was supposed to be. They didn't like fully go into it as much as they wanted to, but it's a little bit of a long breakdown. But Ernie shares a name with Ernst Kaltenbrunner, who was a part of the SS.
Oh shit.
He listens to the German Afrika Korps march song, Panzer Rollen in Afrika Vor. I'm sure I mispronounced that, but when he's like embalming the bodies on his listening on his Walkman. That's the song.
Oh,
The gun he carries is a German Walther P38. He has a picture of Eva Braun in his morgue. And he also refers to the rainstorm coming down like ein betrunkenen Soldat, which means a drunk soldier in German. And he really knows his way around a crematorium. And he's surprised and ashamed when he learns that the dead can feel pain. And apparently in an interview, Dan O'Bannon mentions that he was supposed to be an escaped Nazi in hiding.
Fuck me.
So yeah, there you have it.
Holy
that's
shit.
a deep. I mean, consider the movie came out in the 80s,
84,
and he was an old man. So like, yeah,
Damn.
that totally makes sense. See, I was over here on the wrong movie. Planet of the Vampires, I was looking for Nazis.
Fucking
I should have been
right?
looking here, bro.
Mm-hmm.
God damn, that's wild. That's absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I didn't
As
see that
evidenced by
coming
my
at
surprise.
all.
But I did not know that. So, well, I'm kind of glad he got blown up by a nuke. But anyways,
Yeah.
So in the what would you do? Let's say that, the three of us, we're kind of in the situation of the punk group, right? So, of course, we're not over here fucking around watching like strip dances in a graveyard. But
We're not.
let's say we were driving by a graveyard and we just happened to see, someone like trash stripping or something like that. So we're like, oh, what's going on over there? And then zombies start popping out this bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And your car breaks down. What is your go-to in a small town like that, where there's like the mortuary, there's the crematorium, and then there's like the street if you want to take that chance? How are you getting away? What's your plan?
I'll risk the streets.
The streets?
Streets.
Oh, damn. Dan just said he was for the streets, but Nico, what are you about to do?
I'm a barricade somewhere. I don't know where, but I'm a barricade somewhere.
Well, you pick wrong, but
I did? Oh, well.
yeah. I'll say this.
Oof.
I'm also probably going to take the path of the streets because the way I see it, the zombies are all coming from one general direction. So I just have to be fast enough to like escape their line of sight, and then I'm good. So I just feel
For a
like,
little while anyway.
well, dude, I'm not going to stop running. Like, remember, they launched a nuke into that zone,
Yeah.
and yeah, no, I'm not playing that.
I mean, I don't think you can run far enough away
From
in that
a
amount of
nuke.
time to get away from a nuke.
No, listen,
but
that was
that's
a targeted nuke, okay?
bruh.
So they had
Your
more than
radiation
enough
doesn't
time.
exist. It's okay.
No, listen, if there was like an Amtrak there, I could hashtag no sponsor take the Acela, and the Acela moves fast enough so that maybe, just maybe, due to the speed of the Acela, I could escape.
The ghost train from Final Fantasy VI.
Yo! Just suplex that motherfucker. Best moment in the entire series. Don't at me.
So I guess that's pretty much what we would do. But one thing I really want to know what you would do is tell me what you think this movie has on Rotten Tomatoes.
Man, I'm gonna guess fucking high. I'm gonna be disappointed if it's not high. I'm gonna say like, because this has such a large cultural cachet, and so much of our media that relates to zombies comes from this. I feel like it has to be really 95.
I was going to
Dan,
say
where you at?
93. Yeah.
Dan wins it.
Okay.
Although not by much, Nico, in your defense. This one has a 91% from critics on Rotten
Wow.
Tomatoes.
Okay.
The audience not so
Good.
generous, coming in at a 79%.
Still pretty
But you know
good.
what I say? Yeah, but it's not about what people think. It's about what you think. So why don't you go ahead, give me a brief synopsis of your thoughts, maybe call out your favorite scene, and tell me your score.
This movie fucking rules. I'm gonna give it a 93. I think my favorite scene is when Trash is going up to, again, car dude. I can't remember his name, and
I think his name might be
Suicide.
Suicide.
Suicide. Is that Suicide? Okay, yeah. My favorite scene is when she's dancing in the graveyard. And no. My favorite scene is when she's talking to her boyfriend about all this weird shit, like they're about to fuck, and she's just like, "Do you ever think about getting decapitated? Do you ever think about rising from the dead?" And he's just like, nah, I don't.
Dude, I don't think I don't think that's her boyfriend, bro.
Well, then whoever the fuck, just that interaction.
That was Spider. She was talking to Spider, and Spider was like,
yeah.
"What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah, no, that just the entire time they're in the graveyard is my favorite scene. So,
Yeah, I am right there with you, Nico. I fucking love the movie. It was a ton of fun. My favorite scene, as I mentioned it before, is just when they're carrying the two zombie people out, people who turned into zombies, Freddy and Mentor, and they're just like screaming. Like I just audibly laughed because I don't know, I thought that was pretty funny. And that's when I realized that like everyone on set was just having a blast. So yeah, I'm gonna echo reminisce what you said and give it a 93.
Well, believe it or not, I'm also going to echo reminisce what both of you have said, because I think this movie fucking rules. And I think that generally, I mean, I don't like watching movies back to back. And by back to back, I mean, like, if I just recently watched it, I'm probably not trying to watch it again. People who keep up with the Halloween Spooktacular will know that I watched this movie for Halloween Spooktacular. So it was only a couple months ago that I really watched it. And normally, unless it's like, some Howl's Moving Castle type shit, I don't really, watch movies all that regular. Again, like the same movie over and over again. But this movie is so good that, like, I don't know, I had no problems watching it again. It was a total blast. It's a ton of fucking fun. And I feel like it ends perfectly. Like, that is how I would expect a zombie movie to end. They think they ended it, but it's not over. So a 93 for me. And my favorite scene is when they go back to the warehouse where like the one zombie is, the Uzi zombie. And like, yo, get ready. He doesn't have like a fucking Uzi, like a gun. He's like oozing. And
he
Little
listens to
Uzi
Lil Uzi Vert.
yeah.
and basically like he is like, all right, let's go. And like, it's like Bert and Spider. He takes a baseball bat and the zombie comes through the door and he just connects him one and like knocks his head clean off, bro. And I was like, there you go. There you go. I think it's time. So obviously we gave this pretty high scores. I'm going to say it's a fair assumption that we give this one a recommend, yeah?
Absolutely.
Is this one
Yes.
going to get the golden seal?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Hang on. So this now has the golden seal
We've
of approval.
incorporated bird sounds. Okay.
Had to like stamp the bird real quick.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, really quick, and this isn't a bit or anything. I just wanted to acknowledge it. The director for this is the same person who wrote the screenplay for Alien. Dan O'Bannon is like low-key a legend of the game, and I didn't even realize it until we were recording it. So just next time you watch anything that he's been a part of, put some respect on his name. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, he's goated.
Bro, I was looking into him. He's done so much shit.
It's honestly really impressive how prolific and just like the list of other stuff he's been. It's just like, it's all, it's like good stuff too. So just like shout outs to you, Dan.
Well, bro, consider this,
well as
right?
you, Dan.
Thanks.
Yeah.
He helped script fucking Life Force,
You're shitting me.
which, is something that we've discussed on the pod. He was a consultant for Chud. He was one of the writers
I forgot about Chud.
He was one of the writers on Total Recall.
Fuck, man.
And like, he's done so much shit, bro. He's done so much shit. So yeah, like hands down, man is a goat. So yeah, I mean, if you like Dan Bannon, if you like Dan here on the podcast,
Dan O'Bannon.
Sorry, Dan O'Bannon. O'Bannon. O'Bannon.
Horror shorts.
Movies.
Meow.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Shout outs to all those who know the O'Reilly auto commercials. But in any case, if you like O'Bannon, if you like zombies, if you like this movie, if you like us at all, hit us up. We're on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook under Don't Open That Door. Plus, you can catch everything we've done on our website, which is, of course, dotdhorror.com. But till then, Take care of one another. Stay warm. I feel like it's been kind of cold recently, so stay warm. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.